Dmitri Voronkov, from the start of the season to the end of the season, might have had one of the more interesting trajectories in the NHL. We're going to talk about that and what his season was really like on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I also want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more, and right now, new customers are going to get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. Now, if you told me at the beginning of the season that Dmitri Voronkov was going to be one of the better forwards for the Blue Jackets this season, I would not have put money on that. Just a really interesting story, and I'm willing to, admit that I was wrong about what I thought we were going to get from Dmitri Voronkov. I thought he was uninspiring in the limited action that we saw him play with the Monsters. He got called up. I thought he didn't look convincing. I thought that his skating was a real weakness, and I think it still is. But despite it, he made this season work for him. I really, really liked Dmitri Voronkov's season. He kind of went the Kromarchenko way a little bit. There was a minute there where he was just scoring goals. He finished with 18 goals on the season and 34 points in total. And just, I don't know, I was really impressed with him. He didn't really look like he was being effective to begin with, but credit to him, I think he adjusted to the NHL well. I think he figured out what worked for him. And I think he enjoyed the season. Obviously, there was that kind of thing at the middle of the season where, he was homesick, he was struggling with learning the language, he was thinking about going home, and that news broke, and I think the organization made a real concerted effort to make him feel at home, and the players kind of really rallied around him. He obviously had decided to stay, and I think really kind of thrived. I will say and something that I want to talk about in a little bit of more detail later on when we talk about how to avoid a sophomore slump for him, is he was at his most effective when he had a Russian line mate. And I don't know how sustainable that is going forward, because Kromarchenko, for my money, should be in the top 6. I think Voronkov is a really, really good third-line center. I don't know what's going to happen with Igor Chinakov. But I don't know how sustainable it is to give him that Russian line mate every single game, because at a certain point, you're either playing him too high in the lineup or you're playing someone else too low in the lineup. The Russian line was a lot of fun, very kind of all offense, all go, all offense, all of the time, and not really much defense at all, if any. They got killed in basically every matchup except actual goals scored, which, hey, that's the one that counts, but I could see why it was broken up. And I think each player kind of coped individually a lot better when they were not all on that one line. As much as it was fun, and I would like to see that again, I think Chinakov, Voronkov, Marchenko is a great third line, but I think Marchenko specifically should play higher up in the lineup. I think Marchenko should be in conversations for that top line right wing spot on the other side of Johnny Gaudreau. But we're not talking about Kromarchenko today. We're talking about Dmitri Voronkov. First off, I want to reiterate just how funny it was that he grew 6 inches and gained 50 pounds during training camp, because they only had his draft day stats, and then he got to Columbus and they measured him and were like, oh, actually, this guy is not 6 foot, 204 pounds. He's 6'5", 250 pounds. Just an absolute monster. Surprising goal scoring. I wasn't expecting the goal scoring to come from him. I liked a lot of his game. I think there's definitely things that he needs to work on. And again, we'll get into that, into how to avoid a sophomore slump later on. But just kind of surface thought on Voronkov effective. Just a really effective player. Plays in a niche. There's not a lot of players like him in Columbus. And I think that if he can recreate kind of that success of his rookie season, I think that the Blue Jackets could have a real kind of hidden gem on their hands here with Voronkov. I don't know that he hits kind of the ceiling that a lot of fans kind of thought when they heard that Voronkov was coming over. I think everyone's really excited about this guy, and he was going to be, this elite talent for the Blue Jackets. But I think for what he is, I think he's very, very good. I wish that his skating was a little bit better, but to his credit, he has made his game work without needing to be an elite skater. And I think that's something that's really kind of looked over in terms of when a player has like a deficiency like that. It's always treated as a deficiency, and you look at it, and some play like Dylan Strome is one that I think about a lot, and I'm not comparing these two players at all, but Dylan Strome's knock was always that he looks like he's got 2 broken ankles when he skates. Like, he's not a dignified skater at all. He's not a strong skater, but he has made his game work for him, and he's overcome is not the word I want, but he has adjusted his game so he doesn't need to be an elite skater to make it work. And I think Voronkov similarly made it work. I think he benefited a lot from the players that he was playing with. I think he benefits from being enormous. I don't know why he wasn't like standing in front of the net on every single minute of every single power play that the Blue Jackets had, because like it's a hell of a screen for any goalie. He's bigger than probably 70% of the goalies out there. And I think he's going to go from strength to strength if he is developed properly and continues on this path of kind of making his game work for him, as long as they don't try and turn him into something that he's not. And I want to talk about that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets, as we look into how Dmitri Voronkov can avoid going into the sophomore slump that we've seen Blue Jackets players suffer through in previous years. So that's coming up in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you about Policygenius. Life insurance is such an important safety net for you and your family, but trying to find the right policy on your own is time-consuming, it's overwhelming. I certainly don't understand it. I wouldn't know where to start, but Policygenius cuts out the middleman for you. You can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 a year for $1 million of coverage. Some options even offer things like same-day approval. You can avoid unnecessary medical exams. It's convenient. It's life-saving. You might not be as well covered as you think with your current life insurance policy. If you have one through work, if you leave your job for whatever reason, it might not come with you. It might not offer enough protection for you and your family's needs. Policygenius can figure that out for you, compares your options from top companies. They've got a team of award-winning agents that are going to walk you through the entire process step by step. And it just takes a few clicks to find the lowest price for you. They're going to give you unbiased advice from a licensed expert support team, and they've got no incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you know that you can trust their guidance. Join thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best fit for their needs, and check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/LockedOnNHL or click the link in the description below to get your free life insurance quote and see how much money you could save. Once again, that's policygenius.com/LockedOnNHL. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day every single day. We're talking about Dmitri Voronkov and how he can avoid a sophomore slump. And I think coaching is going to be really key here, because Dmitri Voronkov, and this again was a lot of my issues this season with various players have been like, well, he played too much, he played too little, and it's a lot of it is coaching based, so like, as opposed to faults with the actual players. Dmitri Voronkov had 18 goals in 75 games, and he was doing that, if I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but as I pull them up, I believe he was playing an average of like 13 minutes a game. Like, that's pretty good, if you ask me. Let's see if I can pull up the goals per 60, because there was a minute there where he had a better goals per 60 than Connor Bedard. Obviously, that's not the be-all and end-all, Connor Bedard missed a bunch of time. Connor Bedard is otherworldly, and also playing like 20, 22, 24 minutes a game. I'm not saying Dmitri Voronkov should have played that much, but when you're getting this kind of performance out of someone who's only playing 13 minutes a night on average, which means some nights he played more, some nights he played less, I feel like you just there's more there. I don't know that I'll be interested to see what happens next season, whether he has a slow start, whether, and who he plays with. That's going to be really important as well. I could see the lineup getting a huge shakeup next season. We don't know who's going to be on the team. We don't know who's going to be where. Like, is Patrick Laine going to be back? Is Alex Nylander going to be back? Who gets re-signed in terms of the RFA pool? Like, there's a lot of moving parts. Is Dmitri Voronkov one of the best 13 forwards on this team? Yeah, probably. But is he going to be in the top 12? And I'm not sure. For my money, he should be. But I'm looking at the Blue Jackets currently, not including Laine, who is on the player assistance program, and Kent Johnson, who finished the season on injured reserve. The Blue Jackets have 15 forwards on the cap right now. 7 of them, again, not including Johnson, are currently RFAs or UFAs. And that's including guys like Carson Meyer and Brendan Gaunt, who are only on the roster because they are injured and couldn't be sent down to the Monsters for their playoff push. But like, there's a lot of working out to do here in terms of where Dmitri Voronkov is even going to fit in with this squad when it comes down to it, and looking at the names, looking at the players, like, I could see Dmitri Voronkov as that third line center and playing with, like, I think I talked about this in Boone Jenner's season review yesterday. If you have a line of like Texier, Voronkov, and Jenner, maybe that feels like a lot of fun. I feel like that line's going to be effective. Like, they're going to kill the heck out of any kind of penalties. I think they'll be defensively pretty sound. It's just a case of if Dmitri Voronkov can kind of keep growing and keep developing. I finally pulled up the numbers. He averaged 13 minutes 27 of ice time in a game, and that's, I don't know. I think that's impressive that he got the point total that he did, considering, like, I don't know. It's frustrating to me to see some players getting, and this is not a knock on Boone Jenner at all. He's the leading forward for ice time right now. 20 on average of 20 minutes and 6 seconds. You're telling me you couldn't have taken 2 minutes away from Boone Jenner and given them to a guy like Dmitri Voronkov to balance the lineup a little bit, to reward players for playing well? I don't know. Again, maybe it's just me. But in terms of goals per 60 minutes, Dmitri Voronkov was 8th on the team, counting Luca Del Baluz, who has a goals per 60 minutes of 6.26 because he played like 12 minutes in that game and scored a goal. So we're not counting him, but not counting him, he is 7th on the team. The 3 Russians are ahead of him. Laine is ahead of him. Nylander, Jenner, and Malatesta also, who I feel like we can probably take out of the equation because he played 11. He played more games than I expected. Actually, maybe we'll keep him in there. But Voronkov was an extremely good offensive player this season, and I don't know what you need to do to kind of keep him producing like that, or maybe even take him up a notch. It's gonna be an interesting one, and I don't know what they're gonna do with Voronkov. But I think you have to see what you have here, because I don't think he's gonna become like the next Kirill Kaprizov, for example, and that's just the first kind of Russian player that came over late that sprung to mind. Voronkov is 23 years old, I believe. Taken in the same draft as Igor Chinakov, I also believe, taken in the draft before Igor Chinakov, because Chinakov was an overager. But 23 years old. I don't know that he has that many more steps to get to. Like, in a couple of years, he's going to be at his peak. And I feel like you have to see what you have now while he's under team control, while he's young enough that he can bounce back. And but I'm quietly optimistic on Dmitri Voronkov. I don't think he's going to be a game breaker for the Blue Jackets, but if he's your third line center, like that feels like a really good position for him to be in, and a really good position for the Blue Jackets to be in terms of having something approaching center depth for the first time since like the start of the 2021 season, or whenever it was that they had, whatever year it was where they had Mikko Koivu for like 8 games before he got COVID and then retired. Like, that was the last time that I was content with the center depth on this team. So I want to say that was the 2021 season, but I could be wrong about that. In terms of grades, for Voronkov, I'm going to give him an A. I think he over delivered on what I was expecting of him. And so, like, am I grading on a curve a little bit? Yes, but I was not expecting Dmitri Voronkov to finish, what was it, 5th on team scoring right now. He outperformed a lot of players on this list. He was the leading rookie scorer. Admittedly, he played 25 games or 26 more games than Fantilli, only had 7 more points than Fantilli. Obviously, Fantilli's season cut short, but I think he over-delivered on what I was expecting from him. Like, Dmitri Voronkov, I was expecting maybe 10 goals and 20 assists, and he hit 18 goals and 16 assists. So, like, it balanced out, but I was expecting, like, maybe a 30-point season from Dmitri Voronkov. He over-delivered. I'm going to be really, really interested to see where he goes next in terms of, well, not where he goes next because he's going to be with Columbus, but like what we get from Voronkov. Because I think they could get good things from him. I think he could become one of those players that plays lower in the lineup, gets PP1 time, gets penalty kill time, plays a suspicious amount of minutes for someone who plays on the third line. And if you can get, 20 goals out of Dmitri Voronkov next season, 20 to 25 goals, like you take that and you run, quite frankly. I think he's a really, really promising forward for the Blue Jackets. And they don't really have anyone else like him on the team, like I said. So I don't feel like he's not like another small scoring winger, for example, that the Blue Jackets have a lot of prospects that are smaller scoring wingers in the pool. So like, I don't feel like he's extraneous in a way that some of the other prospects are. I don't think he technically counts as a prospect anymore because he's played too many games and also is 23 years old. But my point still stands, is that I don't know that he's a guy that the Blue Jackets end up having to move because they don't have room for him. I feel like they're going to make room for a guy like Voronkov. But we'll see. That's going to be something that the next GM is going to have to figure out. And speaking of GMs, a report came out yesterday that someone is currently in the running for the job, and it's a name that I was extremely unhappy with. And so we're going to talk about that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I've got to tell you all about FanDuel. It's winner-take-all time in the NBA and the NHL. FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a win of your own. Right now, new customers are going to get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 if your team wins. You can bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Literally, just go to FanDuel.com, find the heaviest favorite you can. I don't know who's doing the thing in the NBA right now, but hey, maybe bet on the Dallas Stars to win it all. If that bet comes out, you get $150 that you can spend on literally whatever you want. FanDuel.com/lockedon is the place to go. Make every playoff shot count. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook and also our #1 sportsbook here at the Locked On Podcast Network. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We've got to talk about Marc Bergevin apparently being in the conversation for the Blue Jackets GM, and this is a bad idea. Like, just straight up, there's no like, oh, I'm going to hedge my bets and, well, maybe he could be good for this team. I just don't see a world where Marc Bergevin, who in the entire time he was the GM of the Montreal Canadiens, yeah, he drafted some decent players. Yeah, he picked up some decent players. They always talk about how he took that team to a cup final. He didn't. The corpse of Carey Price took that team to a cup final in 2021. And in Carey Price's entire career with the Montreal Canadiens, he did not have a point-a-game player in front of him for like that full 8 or 9 seasons. Like, it's fully insane that in Carey Price's entire tenure with the Canadians, he did not have a point-a-game player in front of him. Like, Nick Suzuki was the first player to hit 82 points last season for, like, in the last, like, 20 years for the Canadians. Like, it's fully insane. I don't think he trades well. He has his guys that he likes. You know, he was a big proponent of picking up guys like Andrew Shaw, who didn't work out for the team, Josh Anderson, who didn't work out for the team. I think he drafts fine, but I think he has a reliance on, he has his guys that he likes and his archetypes that he likes. So I guess, like, if Marc Bergevin gets drafted, like, the Blue Jackets can look forward to drafting a guy like Anton Silayev, which I've talked about a little bit. I'm not a fan of that draft choice. Bergevin, also probably big fan of a guy like Caden Lindstrom, or he could draft someone like Catton or Ginla at 4th because he wants, like, he in the same vein of, like, the Jesperi Kotkaniemi pick, for example, that was kind of out of the blue, and if it worked out, he would have been a hero for picking this, like, hidden gem. If it didn't work out as it didn't, then it would have been a bad pick. So, like, I could see either of those being an option. I don't think he was a very good GM. I have issues with the way that he handled the Logan Mailloux thing, and we don't have to get into Logan Mailloux and whether he deserves to be in the NHL or the AHL or whatever. Like, I'm not talking about that. But the fact of the matter is that Logan Mailloux committed a crime, said he didn't want to be drafted, and then Bergevin went ahead and drafted him anyway, and then didn't really have any kind of accountability behind why he decided to do that. And I have a problem with that. He was on no, we're not gonna get into the Brad Aldridge thing again, but he was on the Blackhawks management team in 2010, so I am suspicious of that as well. I don't think he is as bad as Mike Babcock in terms of the effect that he'll have on the team, but it feels like the Blue Jackets are going in a similar direction of, this guy's name is notable, he has a lot of experience, and it doesn't really matter how good he was at his previous job. We want the experience as opposed to the talent, which worries me a little bit. I'm not, like, super worried yet. Obviously, there have been a lot of names thrown out there for this potential job. People were throwing John Tortorella's name out there a couple of weeks ago for, hey, maybe he wants to be the GM of the Blue Jackets. Like, until someone reputable talks about how it's kind of picking up speed and is likely, then we'll deal with it then. But I feel like there's 10 names maybe that have been thrown out there as being in the running. You know, like, there's a lot of names out there, but getting an interview is not getting the job, you know? I don't necessarily think it's, like, doing their due diligence on a guy like Marc Bergevin, but I wonder if he's reached out and said, hey, I'm interested. They're going to throw him an interview because why not? I'm not super worried about this. I think it's a bad idea. And the more it kind of goes on, I'm going to just, this feels like a real Blue Jackets hire in a way that they're going to be just kind of mired in mediocrity again for the next 5 seasons, or however long Marc Bergevin sticks around for, if he even is hired. Like, it doesn't feel like the right pick for where the Blue Jackets are as an organization in terms of, they are 1-2 years into this rebuild. I don't think bringing a guy like Bergevin in to supervise the rest of the rebuild makes sense. Considering he doesn't actually have a success, like, he doesn't have success in rebuilds. You know, he left as soon as the Habs fell apart, and the Habs started getting better without him, you know? So it's not like he can even be credited for the Habs starting to turn it around. There's a lot of question marks in Bergevin's GMing that I don't think makes sense with the Blue Jackets. It's someone had a really great tweet about it that I saw when I was kind of scouting around earlier. I'm gonna see if I can find it real quick. But it's just, it feels like it's the same old retread that I'm so. Oh, here we go. From Lester Watson. Why do we do exhaustive searches just to return to the good old boy network every time? And then at Union and Blue, I love this comment from Lester because Bergevin does feel like the Babcock hiring all over again. It does feel like just instead of hiring a new potentially inexperienced, but more talented is not the word I'm looking for, but like there are guys like Eric Tolsky, there are guys like Mathieu Dash that have not necessarily GM experience, but have experience in working in a GM's office, and I think have a lot more to offer this team. Than a guy like Marc Bergevin, who hasn't been a GM for a couple of years, wasn't a particularly effective GM before that, and his only real mark of success was that 2021 Cup final for the Canadians that was Carey Price dragging the team there on like 1.5 legs. And it ended his career. So I don't want this hire. He immediately has gone right to the bottom of my kind of unofficial Locked On Blue Jackets GM rankings. I'll be interested to see what someone like actually connected with the team has to say about it, because as of right now, it's just that one tweet from Dennis Bernstein, who I believe is a Kings reporter. Yeah, he's with the LA chapter of the PHWA. He's the only one so far that has announced it, or not announced it, but he's apparently in consideration for the Open Blue Jackets GM role. That's all he has said. No one else has said anything apart from like a couple of weird burner accounts. They're like, yeah, he's definitely getting hired, #insider. So I'll be interested to see what the media that is actually connected to the team has to say about it, if and when it does start picking up speed, if at all. This could be one of those things where it's just like, remember when Patrick Waugh was in consideration for the Blue Jackets coaching job and then it immediately disappeared? Like I wonder if it's one of those things, if it's just a name that's being thrown around. Who knows? But not super happy about it. It is what it is. We'll see. That's kind of what I've got for today here in Locked On Blue Jackets. Tomorrow we will talk about Cole Sillinger, I believe, is next on my list of players to talk about, and I'm excited about this one because after a really disappointing sophomore season, I think he turned in a really good junior season, I guess is the next step to that. So that's what we'll do tomorrow. We'll talk about Cole Sillinger and how he bounced back from that terrible sophomore season. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets on Twitter and on Instagram. If you have questions, comments, etc., you can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on YouTube, on Sirius XM. And thank you for making us your first listen of the day every single day. You want to be an everydayer, then the subscribe button is right on the screen right now, if you're watching on YouTube at least. So please feel free to go ahead and do that. I would love to hit 1,000 subscribers by the time the opening night rolls around. We're currently about 250 off. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so, because it helps me out. It helps you out. Everybody wins. Thank you for listening. Until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.